performing in the game, you would get behaviours such as aggressiveness, such as cheating, such as copy. You were actually opening yourself to a whole bunch of, because of the nature of the game, that there were winners and losers. It would automatically mean that if somebody won, somebody else was going to have to lose, and this wasn't terribly equitable. So the assessment, there were 3 types. At the end of decision period 5, there was a formative presentation to a board of directors. So essentially, the teams had to get together and explain why they'd made the decisions that they'd made so far. So it didn't actually matter if they were top or they were last, because they had to justify it. And they had to explain where they were going next, and that was worth 40% of the final mark. Then at the end of the course, they had to do individual analysis, and that was looking at what had happened over the whole period and where you as an individual would go for the next 3 decision periods. And there was a reflective statement that was, again, asking students to look at what they'd learned and think about how they might apply that to the real world. So that was 40%. And the other 20% was given on worksheets that was a team component. So, and this was partly to get people to think about the team processes and partly to make sure that people actually turned up for meetings. And at the end of each team meeting, they had to submit a worksheet which said the decisions made and the rationale for making them. So again, I like that because it's using different types of assessment at different times to support the game rather than detract from it, but also the performance in the game really, really doesn't matter in terms of get your assessment. You can fail the game completely, you can come last, and as long as you've learnt from it and you can prove that in the assessment, you can get 100%. Now this is, I'm just waiting for the slide to update. Okay, this is the Great History Conundrum, and this is a game that is being used I think even now at the University of Leicester. It's run by a colleague of mine, Alex Mosley, who I'll be very happy to give contact details for. I'm very happy to, and he's very happy to talk to anybody about this. And it's a puzzle game that was designed to map to, I think it's the first year undergraduate history curriculum. So it's looking at areas such as research, such as evaluation of research. There's some critical thinking ideas in this. And students were each given virtual puzzle cards, and you can see this is an example of one in the picture, which they have to solve, and each one has right or wrong answers. Now they can solve individually.
Nick?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's my job, really. Amanda's got a very good question there about somebody purposely behaving or performing badly in a game. Did you want to talk to that?
Well, yeah, what we found was around about week 7 or 8, and I think there were 16 decision periods, it became quite clear that there were some groups that had potential to win, and there were some groups that didn't. And then we saw quite a marked difference between those that had the potential to win were really going for it and were quite competitive about it. Those that didn't kind of dropped off in terms of competitiveness. So I don't know whether they were purposefully bad, but they'd realised that actually they couldn't win the game, so it was about the assessment. So it didn't really matter, and then they became a bit more strategic and thinking about, well, what can we put in so to write about. So I think that did happen a bit, but only for people once they'd realised that they weren't actually going to win. Yes, absolutely. Again, I'm not from marketing. I didn't actually mark these, but the feedback from the lecturer was that they'd actually thought about what went wrong, what went right, and what they'd do differently next time. I don't understand the last point.
Amanda, would you like to use the mic? Somebody's got their mic open, besides Nicola. Amanda, would you like to comment on that the assessment? I think are you saying that the assessment was the fact that they were evaluating what went right and what went wrong?
Yeah, I think that was the intention, that it didn't actually matter what they did at all in the game, that they could have done random choices as long as they could justify them. So it was partly that they could analyze what they'd done and they could work out why it had happened in such a way, but also so that they could justify things. Okay, I'm going to go, if Amanda, do shout if that's not a clear answer or you want anything else, but I'm going to go, I'm just a bit wary of time and I want to get through my last couple of slides. So it's going back to Great History Conundrum. Basically, students were given 3 cards, virtually they were sent by email, that they had solved on their own. Some of them were collaborative, or some of them could be collaborative, and they had 3 cards in hand at any time. So if there was any 3 they couldn't solve, they can actually swap one of the last 24 hours. So they had to give them a try. And this was played over the course of an entire unit, so I think that'll be about 12 weeks. And it was designed to be collaborative as well as supporting the team problem solving. So it used discussion forums and the group project around it. And this game is actually designed around the assessment. So it was really simply these puzzles. And they actually got 30% for solving the puzzles. So this is an example of where the in-game assessment was counting. How well they did in the game did matter to the assessment. And this was marked automatically, but it was only 30%. Another 30% was done for the quality of the discussion posts. So the idea of the discussion was that people were discussing points in the puzzles and asking for help and helping one another around that, but also they were looking for more than just simply one sentences. They were looking for kind of critical reflection, for evaluation, for analysis. So, and these were marked using a matrix by postgraduate students. The final part was that there was actually a group project that was built around this, which I'm not entirely sure exactly what that entailed, but that was built up on a wiki through the course of the game, and that was marked by course tutors, and that was worth 40%. So again, it is very possible to do very, very badly in the game, but to still take part in the collaborative activities and still get a good pass. Ooh, I have accidentally gone back about 4 slides. Moving on to the final example. And this is one that is actually an example of game-based assessment without game-based teaching. Right, and this is from the Scottish Qualifications Authority. And this is an example of, oops, I've got over-enthusiastic, I think, with the, right, oh. Okay, of game-based assessment in formal learning. So this is for what's called the Skills for Work qualification. Now this is part of the Scottish qualification framework, and they're pre-vocational qualifications which aim to bridge the gap between school and college or school and work, and are typically aimed at low achievers, although apparently they also attract very, very high achievers. For instance, people wanting to go into medicine who want to differentiate themselves from other candidates by having this kind of extra practical work-based qualification. Now, it's an example of traditional teaching. I say traditional, it's essentially active on-the-job teaching with game-based assessment. And so far, there are assessments live for both the health sector and retail. So those are the kind of areas. Now, I think this screenshot comes from the health sector, which is partly to do with doing risk assessment. So, for example, in this assessment, the player goes into this virtual world, and it's done using thinking worlds, and looks at the potential hazards and the potential risks, and is able to identify them. And what happens when they find a risk is that they'll get a pop-up window which will ask questions about it. So it was described to me by one of the designers as essentially objective testing in context. So the whole virtual world thing is quite nice, I think, because it allows you to actually look around and to emulate the real world idea of, okay, there's a wheelchair blocking a door, that might potentially be a hazard.